We are Fandom Roulette.
Two nerds with a passion for
History,
video games,
tabletop games,
and, well, really any nerdy stuff that comes into our lives.
While we might not be able to name every ship classification in Star Wars,
Or every Pokemon.
or every spell in the player's handbook,
Well, one of us can.
we're still here to have a good time. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody. Wow, I almost biffed that one up.
Whoa, how about that awesome new intro?
Yeah, love it.
Ooh, it was so fancy.
Is it weird
Yeah.
because I'm lying to myself because I know how it's going to sound eventually, but I haven't made
it's
it
gonna
yet.
sound fucking rad. It's just, yeah, okay, I suppose. All right, Cody. I guess if you want to let the listener in,
You know I want them in on the combo.
it's we don't hear it. We don't hear it. It's just, it gets dropped in later.
Yeah.
So, there you
Wow.
go.
Wow.
All right.
It's just a bunch of sound effects smashed together and emojis.
Oh my god, are we like a drive time radio host then?
Yeah.
I mean-
I basically am just building a soundboard of all of the most obnoxious things, and I'm gonna, just play them at all times.
That's cool.
I just want me going.
Yeah, and then didn't drop in that air horn that everyone.
Oh,
likes.
of course, yeah. Just
And
guys.
then, layer that over the bad one I did, so that they hear my bad one with the real one on top of it, and it's some good audio right there.
Yes.
This is Family Roulette, a podcast where we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, tabletop games because it's not always RPGs, and also whatever nerdy stuff we want to talk about at the time.
Yeah.
Hey Cody, you got any nerdy things you want to talk about, my boy?
Yeah.
We've been gone for a little while, so I'm sure
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little bit of a beefy section. So
Yeah.
start us off, friend.
I had 2 sessions of D&D. I had Elf Force 1 and your guys' campaign, which I did campaign diaries for, which is in the normal format, because I think everything else up until that point was kind of catching everybody up.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm doing them by session, so some of them might be short or long, depending on... But anyways, I did that, and that was really fun. And then I saw Captain Marvel, and that was really good.
What do you think of Captain Marvel?
I loved it. I don't want to start a war on the internet, but I probably will as soon as I say this. I don't know why people are so upset about this movie. It's a solid Marvel movie. I guess it doesn't do a whole lot to go. See, here's the problem right now with Marvel movies. They've just done such a good job with so many of the movies that they've set the bar so high. Yeah. So when I say, "Oh, Captain Marvel didn't do anything to exceed that bar," is not a good representation of the movie, because the movie's great. It's
good. It's a high fucking bar,
right? And there are certain parts that definitely go over that bar for sure. I just don't, that's a hard legacy to jump over. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
But it's super good.
I also saw it.
Yeah. I assume you liked it, or are we on?
I liked it too. I thought it was really cool. As a person who knows comics, they did some stuff that I'm not sure. If it's 100% canonically appropriate to comics, but hey, it's a movie, it's their own thing. I'm curious when my friend, my comics friend eventually goes to see it. I want to get his take on it. Not that it's going to change my take, which was, I enjoyed it, but,
yeah, it's got me really pumped for Endgame and stuff.
Endgame.
Did you also see the new trailer for that?
I did see the new trailer for it.
Yeah.
So the thing I thought was really cool about that trailer was its use of red in there's the sequences are mostly in black and white, but in every shot there's almost every flashback sequence, but in every shot there's almost one element of red in it somewhere. So
it was very good cinematography.
Yeah, and then they're walking in with their fucking cool white uniforms.
Yeah.
And there's like theories that there's gonna be like a fucking like dimension gate on Earth that's gonna like open up to like Thanos world,
Thanos land.
which I think is called Titan.
I believe he is a Titan, yes.
He is a Titan. He's from the moon, one of the moons of Saturn, which might be Titan also.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize he was that close. I mean, in a galaxy setting.
From a galactic standpoint. So yeah, I think the thing is, like, in the mythology of like the world, like the Marvel universe, like I think fucking Titan has died a really, really long time ago. Also, there's like a big difference between him in like the comics and him in the movie, which you may or may not know about.
I have heard few things. I know it is a tension point for some fans.
I don't really care. He wants to fuck Death. Like,
I mean, yeah,
really it.
he's got a thing for Lady Death.
Yeah, he wants to impress Lady Death, so he's like, if I kill half the universe, maybe Death will be impressed with me.
And then
like,
Death is like more freaked out than anything.
Yeah, and then like they ended up kind of just turning him into like a YouTuber, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Shots fired. Yeah, and then let's see. Any other? Oh my god. Did you see the fucking trailer? We might have talked this already. The new Detective Pikachu trailer.
Define new. How long does it come out? Because like I saw the one where they did the "I Need a Hero" track.
Yeah. I don't know if we ever actually talked about it on the podcast, which is weird.
Yeah, because that came out a little bit ago. I saw that. Stranger Things 2 or Stranger Things 3. I'm a season behind. Trailer just dropped today too.
Oh, it literally dropped today, and I was at work all day, so I haven't gotten to see it yet.
I literally just got, like, before we started, I had finished it. It looks good. I was a little concerned that like they were gonna like Stranger Things was gonna drag. You know what I mean? Like doing the same, like, oh great, the monster from the other dimension's back again. I thought it would be like a lot like that, and in that way that TV shows tend to get, where like it's like, all right, like
we get it,
but I think I'm convinced by what I saw that it'll be different enough where it'll hold my interest. So I'm excited for it.
I'll say this, like. It seemed like season 2 for like half a second tried to do something different, and then they got really scared.
Yeah, like that whole thing at the beginning where 11 or spoiler tags.
Yeah, spoiler about season 2 of Stranger Things if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, they do a whole thing where like 11 goes off and like joins a group of I guess they're thieves. Yeah,
and like at least one of them is an earlier number.
Yeah, like part of the same like program.
9 or whatever.
Yeah. And like that was a really cool thing, and I actually would have liked to see them pan that out more.
Oh, for sure, because it's interesting.
But like you said, I feel like they got nervous of like changing the kind of doing a complete tonal change of the show and not including like the other kids. But it ended up being cute at the end, like kind of coming full circle.
It paid off well. I would agree with that.
Yeah,
but I would think too. Oh, go ahead.
I just hope that there's enough difference. Like I'm nervous because like this is what happens to good things. We keep like repeating them, and then all of a sudden they become like, someone else is gonna try the Stranger Things. It's like, oh, we already seen enough of that. Come on, like.
I'll say this, like when Will got fucking captured again, but like this time he was on the our side and not on that side. I was like, if season 3, if something happens to poor Will, like just like kill that kid. Like he's been through so much already.
That's so dark.
But like,
holy shit!
Like,
no, I mean, I understand
another kid.
I mean, well, and then there's a couple things from the trailer that I saw. Like, there's that weird that love triangle going on
with Jonathan,
between
Steve, and Nancy.
no, not that one.
Between Max, Dylan, and Lucas.
I believe that's right. I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch, or I hope Netflix does that thing where they recap because it's been a while.
Yeah. Oh, it has. It's been over a year, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope they do a
Yeah, I
recap
know.
so that I can, so I don't have to go through the first two seasons again.
I saw I saw a theory that perhaps Max's like brother was gonna be the one who was possessed this season, but with like a more active, like less like have him lay in a bed and like pant a lot entity.
Okay, okay.
Because like her brother was like pretty despicable and like, yeah. Let's see.
Well, from the trailer, they besides revealing the monster,
Okay.
which they revealed the monster in the trailer, which
Bold.
I almost wish they hadn't, because they did a really good, like, it's a really well shot scene where it's like, when anything comes over from that place, like the lights flicker and everything's kind of all fucked up.
Yeah.
Like they did a really good scene where like you're only getting like these small little bits, and then there's like the dramatic reveal when like the teleportation is done and then the lights just go back to normal and the creature's there. I wish they would have cut it right before they showed the creature, because I kind of wanted to see like what they were going to cook up next. It does seem like the Shadow Realm is taking a backseat, at least from the trailer. There's a lot of like normal stuff going on. Well, as normal as as mundane as you can. Yeah. But
I mean, hey man, I'm even cool with the Upside Down taking a backseat this season. Like,
yeah, I just hope they keep it fresh, because I don't want to see this show like kind of fall to the wayside like other shows that I've seen do. So
sure.
Fingers crossed. But it looks good from what I saw, and yeah,
that's
I'm
kind
excited.
of starting to happen to Star Trek Discovery a little bit, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I feel like it's kind of falling into some of the problems that I had last season, which like it was so interested in getting there that it wasn't as interested in like paying off every individual episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're doing the modern day season where the payoff is at the end of the season to keep you.
Yeah, like
where like that's very like almost anti Star Trek.
And then
from what I understand.
Yeah. Well, and then there's like the whole thing too where it's like, so there's a distinction between like science, like sci-fi, and then like sci-fiction, or like sci-fantasy, and then like sci-action. And this one is like kind of starting to fall into sci-action more than anything else.
Yeah, because that's how the movies were. Like, they didn't feel very like science fiction. It was all like, the world's in trouble. I need to shoot my lasers and jump over chasms to save it.
Yeah. And like, I think like an episode that was like really indicative of that was, there was one like, I think this was like from 2 weeks ago. So, still when we were in our hiatus, where like two of the characters are like basically they're having like a conflict of who has to answer to who, because it's like, I technically outrank you, but I'm technically part of a thing that outranks your whole organization. So it's like a whole weird like dick measuring contest, and then they get caught in a time vortex.
Perfect.
And then their space probe comes back, but it's like, looks like one of the squid things from the end of the Matrix.
Nice. Love it.
Starts attacking their ship.
Okay.
And then they were like, clearly our probe got like upgraded with future tech, and then was sent back through the time vortex by a future person to kill us in the time vortex. And I was like, okay. What?
Feels weird, but okay.
Yeah, and like I think it was just literally it was like it kind of felt like it just wanted to have like a cool third act fight sequence with a
Sure,
alien
sure.
squid looking thing.
Yeah.
And then there's like a whole other thing too where there was like something that happened that was like very, very dumb. And then they had a dumb explanation for it. And I'm like, I don't even care. Like your explanation was dumb, one. And two, it's like, do you mind if I give us a quick spoiler? Are you ever going to watch
Spoilers
Disco?
for
Star Trek for Discovery, spoilers for season 2.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Remember Saru, the guy who was like, my race only feels fear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a weird guy, but I liked the actor that
Yeah.
played
So
him.
in season 2, like he goes through like basically like their race will like hit a point where like they feel a tremendous amount of pain and then they get like basically sacrificed to like this other race. And he finds out that it's actually just like an evolutionary thing where it's like they like kind of like it's like losing your baby teeth almost. And so then like he's like, oh man, I don't feel fear anymore, and I found out that like my whole society is built on a lie. Then like 2 episodes after that, there's these two dudes who start like brawling in the middle of the cafeteria, and he's like, let them fight each other. And then the captain calls him out. He's like, hey, in the future, like don't let people fight on the fucking cafeteria deck. And I was like, yeah, dude, like I don't even care if it's technically an evolutionary thing. Like you still know the rules of Starfleet. You're not like a fucking Klingon vessel. Like, show some goddamn decorum. Like,
Right, like this is still a operation that has laws and things that
yeah,
you got
it's
to
like
follow.
I don't know like what you're going through. But, like, anyway. So yeah, that was a very long intro.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, what
So,
history stuff did we got cooked up this week?
yeah, sorry about that. I had some disco stuff that was sitting on the chest that I needed to get out there.
Hey, you
All
know
right.
what? I understand.
So
So why don't
this is
we open up the history books,
Creek
dust off all that dust.
tough. All right. So hey, so this season we were talking about the famous like last stands, which so this one is interesting for like a couple of reasons. One, so last stands tend to be very intensely glorified, because in a
Yes.
lot of cases it's like, oh, they died defending like their beliefs against all odds, and then they tend to be a little uh, uh, yeah, they tend to be pretty like glorifying things like that. And then this one is interesting for another reason because it's going to get me into a little bit of a kind of fundamental question about what history is.
Of course.
So there you go. All right, so we're starting off this little section with the Battle of Thermopylae. Dun dun dun.
Bless you.
Yeah, so you might better know the Battle of Thermopylae as the last stand of the 300.
You know, I was wondering if you were going to open with 300.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a pretty indicative. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, okay, so we're gonna. I guess I'll start off with the last point, which is, we know about the Battle of Thermopylae thanks to Herodotus, who is considered the father of history. Now, Herodotus was a Greek man. He was, by all accounts, a pretty rich Greek man. And he traveled around and he recorded his, like he would interview people and he would write down stories, and he compiled them in these big books called the histories. And so basically there was like this kind of fundamental battle, like very, very early on in Greek culture, which was, what is history? And you kind of had two schools where you had Herodotus and then you had Homer, who was the guy who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And so he falls under what is generally known as epic poetry, and then Herodotus falls under history. And in both these cases, both of these subfields have muses, which are the Greek goddesses of the arts. This is all going to pay off, I promise.
I believe it.
And so basically the fundamental difference was that Homer felt that people would not pay attention to history or Oh, also, Homer might not have been an individual person. Homer might have been a collective of people. We're not 100% sure, although we're fairly certain that Herodotus was one.
Oh, so you're telling me Homer might have been like Illuminati?
I mean, it's possible that there could have been someone named Homer, but like Homer more or less did his storytelling by oral tradition. So it's possible that like Homer gave the basic story and then like let's say you give like the version of the Iliad and you added your own little spin, and then like when it was eventually written down, it could have been like 10 or 15 people had their hands on this and like gave it their own little spin. There are some people who point to different aspects to suggest that it only was one person, like the fact that he uses the same repetitive devices throughout, which was not super common. So that might have been like, or it would have been common to like an individual. But anyway, Homer was like, people aren't going to pay attention to historical stories unless we include fantastical elements to them. So that's why Homer's stories involve the gods and creatures and things like that. Whereas Herodotus is like, no, we got to write down the way the things happened. And so, like, if Ares didn't actually show up on the field of battle, then he's not going to show up in the pages of my book.
Damn.
And so now, of course, there's some interesting aspects of Herodotus that show that he isn't necessarily the most truthful in this little philosophy of his. And the only reason I say that is because there are aspects where he will use other cultures as kind of like, he might exaggerate to show the Greek people like how different they are from Greece. So a good example of this is if you ever read his section on Egypt, for instance, he talks about things like the women, pee standing up and the men pee sitting down. Is that truthful? No, probably not. But what it was designed to suggest was that Egypt is a very different culture from us, where women are treated with a little bit more equality than, our women are treated. So he might exaggerate. He might have exaggerated cultural norms. But yeah. So anyway, back to the actual thing I was going to talk about. So yeah, we know about this story from Herodotus, who is considered by many to be the father of history. And this is the last stand of King Leonidas of Sparta during the second Persian invasion of Greece. Now, simultaneously, there was a battle at Artemisium, which was a naval battle, and this happened in August or September of 480 BC, mainly because, their dating conventions were different from ours, so we have to roughly try to line them up with our calendars. The second, this is the second invasion of Greece, because the first invasion was in 490 BC, which is technically earlier than 480 BC because BC numbers go from higher to lower, and then 80 numbers go from lower to higher. But anyway, the big battle from the first invasion was the Battle of Marathon in 490, which is where we get the modern day term for marathon, mainly because after this big unlikely victory, a guy ran all the way from Marathon to Athens, shouts the word Nike, which is Greek for victory, and then proceeds to die immediately.
Damn.
So anyway, that happened, and people were like, well, we need to commemorate this by having lots of people run that distance.
And then somebody was like, we really need to make a company that sells sports equipment and call it Nike.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually the swoosh is reminiscent of Nike's V, which was also stood for victory. But anyways. Now, so basically, at the time, Greece was a collection of city-states, which is, I guess, loosely considered to be like a confederation, although it's not quite the same thing. Basically, every kind of major civilization that we can think of when we think of Greece, so like Athens, Sparta, Thebes, etc., basically had their own like governmental force, right? So Athens was a democracy with like representative democracy if you were a citizen, There were all kinds of things to be considered a citizen. Whereas, Sparta had like a senate, but it still had like a monarch. So everyone had their own individual things. A lot of times when people talk about ancient Greece, they say that they were they're one culture with like different government systems, basically. So they all spoke the same language. They all prayed to the same gods. But an Athenian was different than a Spartan, was different than a Theban, was different than a Thespian, things like that. But anyway, the Persians were like not happy that the Athenians were able to defeat them at the Battle of Marathon. And they got
super pissed.
They were super pissed because they were basically one of the largest armies in the entire world. They were definitely the largest empire in the world at that point. And basically this one little city-state with, probably light support from other people, were able to stand up to them. Now, the second invasion kind of proceeded on two things, which was there was an Athenian general named, give me 1 second. There was an Athenian general named, there we go, Themistocles, who basically was like, we could hold off Persia if we were able to hold the pass at Thermopylae and the naval straits of the Artemisium. So there was a Greek force of approximately 7,000 men that marched to block the pass, and they were able to stay there for a while. Now, at the time, Herodotus talked about how Xerxes and the Persian army had over 1 million people. Today, scholars think that was probably closer to 100,000 to 150,000, which, to be fair, nothing to sneeze at, but it's still not a million. And basically, the thing is, even though they vastly outnumbered the Greeks, they were able to hold the Persians were held for 7 days. And then basically, after that, after 2 full days of battle, with the 300 remaining Spartans, they were basically outflanked, because of a dude named Aphes. Oh gosh, Avitus.
Bless you.
Yeah, I know it's that one's really actually quite a hard one. Now here's.
But by the way you said it, I agree.
Ephialtes, Ephites, something like that.
Guess as good as mine.
So basically, in the actual story, it ends up being something like 300 Spartans with 700 other Greek soldiers, and then some people also argued that there could have been upwards of like another 1,000 in the rear guard, but it's to say that the 300 Spartans were the ones actually in that pass defending it, whereas these guys fell up their rear. Now here's a fun thing. So if you've watched the movie 300, which that's like not great history in a lot of ways. Surprise, surprise. I mean, it's based off of a comic book, and I'm not one of those like snooty high and mighty types who's going to call you out for like watching and enjoying a movie. One of the things that is true is that that character was in fact a hunchback who might have had some slight Spartan ancestry to him. And he did lead the Persians through a mountain pass, were they basically at that point they were flanked on both sides, and there was no way they were going to win. So I've actually found out that later on in his life, that Ephesus, that guy, died in a bar fight. He apparently like got into a fight with another dude. He died. It had nothing to do with Leonidas or the 300 Spartans, but when Sparta found out, they found out who it was, and they rewarded the guy heavily for killing this like traitor in the eyes of Sparta. Gotcha. Okay. Now, after this, Themistocles, who was in command of the navy at the Artemisium, basically hears that they've lost, so we have to strategize. And so they withdrew to a place called Salamis. And so basically the Battle of Salamis, they were able to win this in 480 BC. And then basically after that, Xerxes withdrew and basically decided to leave Greece alone. So after failing basically 3 times to invade the Greek mainland, he decided, fuck that, and get out of there. So he said those exact words too.
I could hear him saying that. Be like,
oh, man, 3 times? Yeah. Fuck that, I'm out.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, just to show that this story isn't made up, it shows up in the histories of Herodotus. It also shows up in the works of the Sicilian historian Diodorus Siculus in the 1st century BC Bibliotheca Historica, and also in a few Greco-Persian like songs and things like that. Although they weren't super fond of bringing that up because they didn't like talking about the fact that they lost.
I mean, would you be cool with telling about the time you lost a bunch of dudes?
Nope, and history is written by the winners sometimes.
Yeah, rough.
Not 100% of the time. But so basically this, like I said, has been blown up to a huge story about a small group of a small group of men defending their homeland and their belief system and their philosophy and all of these different things, which is, not wrong, obviously. But I think it's one of the interesting things is that most retellings of this discount the fact that there were actually other soldiers that were standing with them. It was just that it was those 300 Spartans that were the ones who kind of died in that final last push. Now, in terms of Xerxes' army, there's one other thing I'd like to point out about it, which is that so in the movie, like, they talk about the immortals. Remember those guys? They had the spooky masks.
Yeah, I remember them.
So there was an elite. Xerxes did have like an elite force of soldiers that was called the Immortals, and basically the concept of it was that they did wear masks, and when one died in battle, there was like a reserve of like basically like you could become an immortal one day. And so the reason that they got the reputation of being immortal was you, like, let's say last night, you killed 100 of them. The next day those 100 would be replaced.
Scare tactic.
Yep. It's actually really effective. It's a really effective scare tactic, actually.
Yes.
And then there's one last thing that I like to bring up about it, which is if you've seen the movie, there is the line at the end, so to go each Spartan passerby that hereby Spartan law we lie. This is a translation from a monument that was attributed to Simonides, who was a Greek poet who was born on Chios, who, once again wrote about, he wrote lyric poetry, which was different than epic poetry. It's a whole thing. But to go back to that first point really, really quick, about this sort of this debate between philosophy or between history and epic poetry. So I think that Herodotus ultimately is proven right in the fact that his stuff is believed much more readily early on than Homer. Homer's big thing is he wrote about the Trojan War, right?
Yeah.
The Trojan War wasn't proven. People thought the Trojan War was a myth because there was no proof that a city like Troy ever existed, and things like that, and the fact that there were gods like fighting on the battlefield. So I think that Herodotus ultimately is proven right in the long term because his stuff is accepted more as generalized fact than Homer. However, Homer is eventually proved to show that he isn't making all of his stuff up, that, the city of Troy was buried a little bit better than people anticipated. It was in a slightly different area than lots of people anticipated. It's just that his stuff was ultimately distrusted because of the fact that it has more mythical elements. But yeah, so that's the 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae. Cody, do you have any questions?
Not a question, but it actually came up just recently. I saw this on the internet, so I'm not taking any credit for it.
Sure.
But in the movie 300, it's like, there's like creatures and like weird shit, like stuff that's not like real. And then somebody pointed out, and I thought it was brilliant about 300, is that the movie is taking place as if the guy who left, and I can't remember his name to save the life of me, telling the troops before they were going to like fight Persia at the end of that movie.
Sure.
And like, yeah, if you're going to tell a story about how you guys, 300 of you bravely fought to like, stand up for what you believe in, of course you're going to like fucking throw fake shit in there, like fucking, super monsters and shit. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like, it was a really neat realization, and it made me appreciate the movie a little more, but I always kind of knew that like, obviously this shit ain't like even close,
Well, I'll throw this one out there too. Is like when you read stuff from this time, sometimes people are encountering things that they had never seen before. Like basically like one of the things that, like I'll go into this in probably another season at some point, but like one of the core things about Greek mythology or the Greek belief system is the further away you get from Greece, the more chaotic the world becomes. Which is why...
Yikes!
Which is why the further away you get from Greece, that's when you start running into things with, like, goats that can breathe fire, or, like, manticores, or, like, dragons and stuff. And so, it's possible that these are things that existed, but, like, to the eyes of a Greek, it's like, well, that thing's a fucking monster. I don't understand that. So that's another potential explanation as well. Yeah, right. It's kind of weird.
Woof. Man, did that not age well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. Hey, so we want to hear another thing?
Yes.
Real quick, and then we'll go into the middle section.
Yes.
So barbarian is actually a term that is coined by the Greeks, and I think might actually be attributed to Herodotus himself. Do you know where the word barbarian comes from?
I do not.
So basically, get ready, because it's dark. When they would encounter people who didn't speak Greek, they thought that Greek was the most perfect language in the entire world. So they would hear people talking not Greek, and it would sound like they were going bar, 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 bar. So it was literally people who speak bar.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they were just making fun of people for not understanding a language. Jesus.
Yep. So yeah, the term barbarian comes from a person who does not speak Greek. So yeah, there you go.
Damn.
And now, on that happy note, it's time for the
middle section. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that. Hey everyone, welcome to the middle section where we talk to you about how you can find us on our social medias.
Yes.
So there's conversations to be had. If you absolutely loved the movie 300 and you're like, that Joe is getting me real mad about a movie that's based on a comic book that's loosely based on historic facts, and you want to yell at us, or me specifically, feel free to tweet at us at
FandomR_podcast.
Yeah, very good. Or
that's our Twitter handle if you want to get real nasty.
Not too nasty, like Twitter is.
Like, well, yeah, don't be like super mean about it. But if you don't like that Joe fucking just dragged that movie through the mud.
Yeah. I took its abs and just dragged it.
Oof, you grabbed it by the abs?
I don't know how that's even possible, but
man, that's some fucking like animal claw shit that you're doing. Anyways, if you wanna yell at us privately and not so that everyone can hear about it, you can email us at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
That's a good email.
Yeah, and if you don't want to do that because
Yeah.
you're afraid that we're going to take that email and sell it to some
Sell it to like the Russians.
well, okay, that's not where my head went initially, but you know what? I'll take it. You can go to www.fandomroulette.com, and it has all of our episodes. You know, a little bit about us, and then at the bottom with all of our social links, there's a little area that says, "Hey, you want to talk to us? Fill this shit out," and then it'll send us a email from our website, so you don't have to give out your shit. Because I get that.
We're not actually going to sell your email to the
No.
Russians.
No.
Okay.
But we're also on SoundCloud and iTunes and Google Play and Spotify and where you normally get your podcasts from. Because, you know, we're everywhere. So if you want to... One of the big things that helps us is sharing us around. So we try our best to be where we can on the podcast spectrum.
Yeah.
Speaking of social media from a little while back, you can find us on Instagram and Tumblr and Twitter and Facebook.
Geez, that's a lot of places, Cody.
Yeah, and my lovely wife is there making fun stuff, making me laugh every time I check it.
Oh,
it's great.
Funny. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
If you're not in there, get there, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll see things that I said and I'll be like, I don't remember saying that. Oh.
Yeah, we're like goldfish. Like this, we forget what we've said, and then my wife is here to remind me of all the stupid shit I have ever said. Yeah.
It's fun, isn't it? It's fun having.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
I said take a dump on history. Like
you did.
Yeah.
Well, I helped that along too. This section's the worst.
Hey, also, please remember to review and subscribe.
Yes, anything you can do to help us would be greatly appreciated.
Give us 5 stars. Say, I really like the middle section part where they ramble a little bit.
Yeah, definitely give us a 5-star on Tinder or Yelp.
Wait, we're doing Tinder again? I thought we got off of Tinder.
Well, I went back on a Tinder bender, so, you know.
Oh, no.
Well, I'm sorry. I
wife.
didn't go on a Tinder bender. That has implications. The podcast went on a bender.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's silly.
It is. So anyways, let's get out of here.
Yeah, oh my god. Pull the ripcord. Yeah.
This is good.
Oh hey.
So yeah, what new guests did you bring in this week?
Well, I guess I don't bring any of these people in. They just show up in my house. Like,
wow, that seems really weird. Are you like some like weird temporal portal between the real world and video game land?
I don't know. But there's a guy sitting here. He says his name is Reggie.
Reggie? But he's real.
It says
I want to meet Reggie. I would legitimately love to meet Reggie.
Reggie Fils-Aimé? Yeah, he seems like a really cool dude. No, he said that once he retired from Nintendo, he went down the pipe. He's living in the Mushroom Kingdom now.
Oh, right. So now he's like got his own set of blue overalls.
So no, he's the Mario. Yeah, he actually
What color did he pick up? Because like there's Mario's red and Luigi's green. What did Reggie get?
He got blue. You called it.
Oh, wow. So he's just like all blue.
It's all blue.
Man, it must be really hard to make like an 8-bit version of him.
He's a big man.
With a limit color palette. Anyways.
He's a big guy. Reggie Fils-Aimé. I don't know. Fine, whatever. What are we talking about, Cody?
So this season I am picking indie games to talk about, and I put an asterisk on that because some games, basically, I'm picking games that have mostly indie-like systems because I've become jaded in the fact that I feel like if you have a publisher and it's like a really like nasty publisher like EA or Konami, then like you have to like forego any like cool like experimental shit because it's like,
Oh, it doesn't make money. Where are my loot boxes?
so this season I'm picking indie games or potentially not indie games that have really fucking rad publishers that let them just fucking run wild. So this week I'm talking about Sunless Sea, which
Ooh, I
was,
know this one.
yeah, it's a game developed by Fail Better Games. It released February 6th of 2015, so a little older.
Okay.
And it was based off of a old browser game. I believe that was called Old London. And it is a Victorian Lovecraftian inspired exploration game where you go to the Untersee, not the
Ooh.
Undersea, the Untersee.
Sounds pretty scary.
It's a subterranean ocean that holds all sorts of Z and horror. And you get to be the Z captain. See, they do a lot of this weird stuff where instead of saying C like a normal person, they had to make it a Z.
I like it.
Yeah. So it is a exploration game with kind of heavy emphasis on lots of kind of like text-based role-playing games, if you remember the days of old.
Okay.
Where, yeah, you basically, you are the owner, proprietor of a vessel in this kind of subterranean fantasy ocean of eldritch horrors and nightmares.
Sounds like
And yeah, it's really cool. The game is kind of set up into kind of two modes of play. There's the exploration area where you get to see the cool art and drive around in your boat and shoot, turrets and missiles at like, giant crabs and monsters and shit or other boats. And then there is the kind of text-based adventure RPG game where when you go into towns or you go, you have certain events that pop up and it's all kind of like a choose your own adventure book. You read a wall of text and you get to pick like the options, and some have like a chance of success and failure, and success usually gives you cool shit. Failure usually takes away your shit.
Oh no.
So basically you gather a crew and you go out, and what's really cool is you can actually set the winning condition for the game.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so I think it starts off with just like a couple. I think I only saw 3, which was exploration, which was explore the entire map. Okay, I get that. Then there was finding the bones of your father, which was fucking wild. And then the last one, which was like so up my alley, was just being rich. Like your goal was to be just stupidly rich.
Get that mud, hon.
Yeah, and it's a really fun game. It is, like I said, like the big, like I think the core mechanics are what works really well is kind of the text-based RPG, the vignettes of text that kind of put you in that world. This game is difficult and it's a bit of a slow burn because you have to kind of learn on the fly like all this shit that's going on.
Okay.
So if you're into faster paced games or you're not willing to like if learning a bunch of mechanics to get better at the game doesn't excite you, this is definitely going to not be a game worth pursuing. But if you like a little bit of a slow burn and you like a lot of really interesting lore and like learning the mechanics, this game's difficult. You have to, while you're out at sea, you have to worry about fuel and food for your party. Your crew is like an expendable resource, and the lower your crew is, the less, like, you don't eat as much food, but you can't go as fast if you hit a certain threshold. It's one of those roguelikes where if you die, you're dead, and there's no really going back unless you change like the difficulty of the game. the game starts you on like hardcore, basically, where it's like if you die, like that's it. You just move on to the next sea captain and you start over.
Okay.
And much like roguelikes, when you die, the world changes a little bit. Like there's some key areas that don't change, but a lot of like the islands in this kind of subterranean place will like switch.
Ooh.
I'm a fairly all right time in. I'm on my about fourth playthrough. I've had 3 deaths so far because a lot of them were just me getting killed by the wildlife because like the combat is not super great.
Okay.
It's hard to get used to at the beginning, but then I think 1 or 2 of my other deaths was trying to remember not to hit the F key because you can overload your engine to go faster. So like there's like a fight or flight mechanic kind of. But if your engine runs too hot, it blows up and kills your crew and does damage to the hull, which can just kill you outright. So yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, so I did that. I killed myself. But like this game is so packed with story, like, and what I really like about the game is like you can't get used to the same things happening over and over again. Like it's not like I'm trying to think of a game.
Pirate game?
Not another pirate game, like Stardew Valley, where someone will only have like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue or something, and like there's not much more to that. I know it's oversimplifying Stardew Valley, but you can go to the same areas, but if like you go to them too frequently and pick the same things, sometimes like bad shit will happen. Like there's these ladies on this island and you can talk to them and they're like, oh, hey, have some free supplies. And if you talk to the right one, they'll give you supplies and fuel and it's good. And I figured that out. And so every time I would go out, I would go to that island first. And then after about like maybe the 10th or 12th time, their house burned down because one of the sisters went crazy because I never talked to them, I think.
Oh, wow.
And it was wild. And then early on, you find that if you have the money and the room for it, you can like transport goods from the starting area, Old London, to this kind of sphinx that they're like harvesting the resources from this like giant monument from. And I did that for a really long time. And it's a pretty solid amount of money that you get. But then one time somebody asked me like, hey, why don't you take that stuff over here and I'll give you like triple what it's worth. And I'm like, well, yeah, duh, I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden the people that were working there just up and left.
Huh.
So like the game is changing around you based on like the things that are going on. It is a really fun text-based RPG with some visual flourishes. The combat is something left to be desired. You mostly end up, there's 2 types of like things that you fight. There's either like the monster, the eldritch horrors of the Untersea, which is basically just sneak up on them and like hopefully just unload all of your guns on them.
Okay.
And then ships, which you'd think would be interesting, but mostly it's just you making sure that you are behind them and just keep shooting them. Like it becomes very easy to exploit the combat so that you don't lose as much health, because like that's like the whole game is like losing resources, because like if your ship blows up, you die. If you run out of crew, you can't move anywhere and then you die. If you run out of fuel, you die. Like there's so many death conditions, and there's a lot of there's a lot of minute mechanics that are going on.
Sure.
There's a sanity meter, and the more that goes up, like the crew members will like just like outright kill themselves, which is fucked up.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. I think this game is a lot of fun. If you're looking for a slow burn, if you're looking for even just like a text-based RPG, think this game is usually like anytime there's a sale, it's on sale. I think I got it for like $10 when I picked it up like a couple years back. They also just released Sunless Skies, which is a similar styled game, but instead of being in this fictitious like Underdark, if you will, from like role-playing games, this is up in the sky and people fly around not on boats but on trains. So yeah, it's a super cool game. It's worth checking out or watching somebody play it for a little bit to see if it's your style. I recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So it's on Steam?
Yes, it's on Steam, computer, Steam, the whole nine. It's on GOG too. If you're not into the whole Steam thing, I get it.
Fair enough.
So, do you smell that?
Oh. It smells bad. It smells like poopy diapers and old cottage cheese. Yeah, that was a pretty evocative one. I'd find you say so myself. Yeah.
It's just
Hey guys, it's Garbage Kid.
It's not feet and diapers. It's just a garbage kid.
Just a garbage kid. Hey guys,
Hit
welcome
me
to
up.
Garbage Kid, our other section that we do, where Cody or I roll a completely random character from a little source book called Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Does it have everything?
It's got a lot of things. So this week, we are talking about a character named Hawk Eternity.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is a good one.
He should be like a lawyer or something.
The dice were kind to me on this one in terms of fun things.
Yes.
So, Hawk Eternity is a gnome warlock who is neutral good.
Okay,
And their
that sounds about right.
background was an entertainer. They knew who their parents were or are, and they were born in a home. They had 3 older siblings, and they were raised by both their mother and their father. We did it!
Woo!
I mean, I'm sure we've done it for others, but like we did it this time.
I don't know if we have.
So they were wealthy, and they lived in a mansion.
Damn.
Yeah, right? Damn, Hawk.
You're like one roll away from living in a palace.
Yeah, I know. I got close, man.
Oh, so good.
They always found it easy to make friends, and they loved being around other people.
Ooh, that charisma, though.
So, I mean, they were like a warlock, so I figured they probably had a decent, because it's a Ka-based fighting class, right? Or
Yeah. You're right.
So they became an entertainer because a traveling entertainer took them in and taught them the trade.
Nice.
And they became a warlock because one of their ancestors had a pact with their patron, so the entity was determined to bind them to the same agreement.
Cool.
The patron attitude was that the patron tricked them into a pact and treats them like a slave.
Not so great.
Their special terms: when they use an eldritch invocation, they must speak the patron's name aloud or risk incurring its displeasure. Ooh.
Yikes.
And then the binding mark is they display an outward symbol of a disease, but suffer no ill effects from it.
Okay.
Now, they are 31 to 40 years old with 5 life events. They fought in a battle and were badly injured in the fight, so they still bear the awful scars of those wounds. They were accused of smuggling, but they did not commit the crime and were exonerated after being accused.
Well, that's good.
They made an enemy of an adventurer.
Cool.
They worked a job related to their background.
Boring.
I know, right? It's always the fun one. And then finally, they went on an adventure and were terribly frightened by something that they encountered and ran away, abandoning their companions to their fate.
Oh, damn. They just left them behind?
Yep. So, Cody, I have a question.
I have an answer.
Let's say that our friend here was walking down the mall. You know, walking down the mall.
The old fantasy mall.
That turn of phrase. And they were like, oh, look at that storefront. It looks like it says Hot Topic. Would they go in and buy stuff?
Yeah. No question.
Mm-hmm.
They probably buy the cufflings that you put on your arms,
Ooh.
but they chain to each other
Oh, so edgy.
to symbolize his servitude to his master.
Do you think he has a chain wallet?
Oh, for sure. And definitely, like, puts, like, I'm not a makeup guru, so I'm gonna fuck this up, but, like, they get their eyes all nice and dark for
Some eyeliner.
for the goth kids.
Yeah, some eyeliner.
Yeah.
Get that good eyeliner game going.
Mm.
So anyway, that's the garbage kid this week.
Yeah, that
good
was a
old
good
friend
one.
Hawk Eternity. Hey, if you
I
want...
assume you agree
with
what I said.
Are you kidding
Okay,
me?
okay.
They're also rich. Like, why? What's preventing them from going into Hot Topic?
True, they could really buy anything. They probably bought like the sleeping bag that had their favorite album of Sum 41 on it.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, what are we talking about in the our tabletop section this season, Cody?
Monsters.
Oh God, I'm scared.
Yeah, so we're talking about monsters this season, which means we're gonna dip dive right into all sorts of. We'll try to keep it varied so that it's not like just what different kinds of monsters.
Yeah,
but this week
quick.
We're talking about low-level, unconventional monsters.
Whoa, what do you mean by that, Cody?
Well, in most games that people have played in or run, it's usually fairly quick and obvious to just throw a bunch of goblins or kobolds or orcs at a low-level party. And I'm here to tell you there are so many more options in the book. And what book I talk about? I talk about 3 books for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Okay. I'm talking the Monster Manual.
Yeah.
I'm talking Volo's Guide to Monsters.
He's got one.
I'm talking about Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes.
I have not looked through that one.
It's a good one. And then there are also a lot of cool websites that can help you design encounters if you're trying to do your own thing. And the one that I recommend pretty much every time we talk about fighting encounters is Kobold Fight Club.
Yeah.
It is a website where you can punch in your party and what levels they are, and what kind of monsters you want to throw at them, and it'll do the crazy D&D 5th edition calculations, because it is a nightmare to figure out how to accurately, by hand, figure out what is a good encounter for your adventuring party.
Yeah.
So, that said, Joe and I have come up with a list of potentially different monster, something that maybe you never thought to use on a level 1 party because you were nervous, or I also have later at the end of this some tips to do your own kind of DM stuff. But Joe, do you want to talk about the monsters that you picked that are kind of unconventional from the usual, like, bandits, goblins, kobolds, and orcs? Oh my.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna start this bad boy off with full disclosure. I am not a DM yet, though I've been prepping for probably a little bit too long at this point. But anyway, so I am I kind of based this off of one thing, which is, as I was reading through the Dungeon Master Guide, they kind of gave recommendations for building encounters and things like that, and was looking at the challenge rating, which I'm sure Cody will talk about at some point, maybe even in the same episode, I'm not sure. So I was looking for things that felt similar to kobolds and goblins and stuff, in terms of the fact that it's like lower CRs, but there are aspects of them that I thought would make for interesting encounters. So I have a couple here. if you will
Yes.
allow me. So I'm going to start off with from the 5e Monster Manual, my little friend, the Bullywug.
I love these. I love bullywugs.
So bullywugs are a frog-headed amphibious humanoid who must stay constantly moist. So they dwell in rainforests, marshes, and damp caves. And they are neutral evil. They're medium humanoid. And so you're probably saying to yourself, "Hey, man, why'd you go with these boys?" There were a couple of things about them that I thought was kind of interesting. The fact that I could see them making for an interesting beginning of an encounter, because they have swamp camouflage, and so you could ambush a party pretty quickly with them, and so you're walking through a swamp and then suddenly like 3 or 4 bullywugs pop out, and it's like, oh god. And then the other thing about them is the fact that they have this thing called standing leap, which they can move pretty dang quick and pretty dang far, pretty fast. So their long jump is 20 feet, and its high jump is up to 10 feet without a running start. So these little bastards can move around the board pretty good. And then they also have multi-attack, which is always fun. I thought that would make for an interesting encounter. Like I said, I could see a first level party kind of like mucking through like a little swampy area, and then 3 or 4 of these little guys pop up, and kind of keep their head spinning. So that was one. The next one that I thought might be interesting are the Kuo-toa.
Yes.
So
I wasn't gonna put them on there, but they were a runner up in mine.
Yeah, so the Kuo-toa are these like little fishmen, basically. Like literally they look like little fishmen. So once again, these are amphibious creatures. They are slippery, which means that they can easily escape grapple, which is something that I don't know if we've ever necessarily used in our campaign before. But they also much like kobolds have disadvantage to sunlight sensitivity. But once again, the thing that I was really interested in was their actions. So they have net, spear, and bite, and then they have a crazy thing called sticky shield. So if a creature misses with a melee weapon attack, the Kuo-toa can use its sticky shield to catch the weapon. So they have to succeed on a relatively small strength check, but if you're still a level 1, a DC 11 strength saving throw might be difficult, and you can potentially lose your weapon, which is much different than I think a kobold might be able to do.
Yeah.
And then once again, Kuo-toa, their CR is 1/4, but if you go down, there are a couple of slightly stronger Kuo-toa builds. We have Kuo-toa Archpriest, which is probably going to be a little too high for a level 1 party, or a Kuo-toa Whip, which does have some slight spell casting, and has a slightly better weapon. And then the last one, this one comes from Volo's Guide to Monsters, which are called, I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, but they are Chitine, Chitine.
It's funny that you actually mentioned these guys, but go on.
Wait, did you have them too?
No, I make a point in a later. Go on. I'll bring it back. I promise.
Oh, okay, fantastic. I can't wait to find out why I'm wrong.
No. You're right.
I'm messing.
They're cool.
I'm messing with you, Cody. So once again, one of the things that I was looking at as I was looking through this monster manual were things that I thought could be kind of interesting, for building, low like encounters. And so a scene from a movie that's always really stuck with me, since I was a kid, was the Shelob scene from The Return of the King.
Yep.
And so they have these two things, which I think could make for really very scary combat encounters, called Web Sense and Web Walker, which is
so strong.
They are not restricted by webbing, And basically, if you are like in a web, they will always be able to know where you are. So, for instance, like, so maybe like one of the reasons I wouldn't necessarily go with one of these boys right away is I don't necessarily want to like discourage a rogue from doing their roguey thing. But if I'm finding that the rogue is spending all of their time hiding and taking pot shots, it might be a friendly reminder to make the rogue think a little bit differently because, hey, they can see you. You're part of their web. So those were like the three ones I had kind of chosen. In terms of, like, once again, these are all kind of like quote unquote stacking villains. In that it's,
Yeah. Goal is to get them to have a bunch of these in combat so that it feels kind of like a mob more than like a single target.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think, especially for lower level, it can help your party think tactically, and figure out, everyone can maybe also get like, a kill in, which I think is helpful for making a lower level party feel powerful. So those were my three choices. Once again, full disclosure, not a DM, but those were ones that looked like I could have some fun with them where I did build a combat encounter around them. So, yeah.
So, awesome. I like this. So I have three tips for creating interesting low-level encounters.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So obviously the first and foremost, the one that we're doing right now is look through the source material, right? I know it's very easy to be like, well, I know what a goblin is. I know what an orc is. Like, I'll just throw that in there. But reading through the book, you find a lot of cool, similar creatures or similar types of combatants that have unique abilities. Like, for instance, I feel like every fledgling or any DM in general should include a spellcaster in some of their fights.
Sure.
Or at least know how to work with one. And what's perfect is Volo's came out with a stat block for the Apprentice Wizard.
Ooh.
And the Apprentice Wizard has, Firebolt, which is a great cantrip. It's got Mending, but besides having kind of the typical like low HP for wizard, low AC, it's got Shield, Burning Hands, and Disguise Self, which has so many unique opportunities both in combat and out of combat. For those of you who aren't aware, Shield gives you a bonus to your AC, and it can basically save that wizard in the off chance that like somebody gets a good hit on them. Burning Hands is like an AoE, like area of effect cone that extends from your hands. So it could be the first time that the party realizes that, hey, maybe y'all shouldn't stack up. Some creatures, some heavy hitters are going to have answers to that.
Oh, that's really smart.
Yeah. And because Burning Hands isn't necessarily a one-hit kill at that level, that's a good way to like teach them, punish them, but not necessarily outright kill them. Mm-hmm. I always also think of the occasional like, you happen to stumble upon one of these where it's like a challenge rating of like 1/8 or 1, or not 1/8, but around the 1 area, like the animated armor from the monster manual. It's got ridiculously high AC. It's basically meant to be killed with like spellcasters who have abilities that rely on saves. Mm-hmm. I think that like having one of those in a group, like in a fight, even if it's the only thing on the field, is interesting to deal with. Because it gets your players to think, okay, how can we deal with the fact that this is basically a like walking armor?
I was actually really close to including animated armor myself, so I'm glad I didn't.
So, and then another one that I liked that you can kind of run these in pairs or maybe packs depending on how many players there are or what level they are Blink Dogs.
Ooh.
basically they're, similar to other animals in this category, but like their ability is that they can teleport up to 40 feet. It's on a recharge, but they can choose to bite before or after the teleport. So say, there's so many opportunities where the blink dog can like say you're having a really hard time attacking their caster who's all the way in the back. Well, these dogs can teleport 40 feet, which should give them plenty of opportunities to do such. I have more, but we're kind of running low on time, so I'll just get to the 2 other tips that I have for unconventional low-level monsters.
Yeah.
A lot of this, and I guess this is peeling behind the curtain, a lot of what makes a encounter, especially at early levels, unique, and I put that in kind of air quotes, a lot of it comes from how the dungeon master describes them, and basically these unique or interesting low-level abilities, like the ability to teleport, or being able to sense creatures on webs. Like, it's a lot of these like the unique abilities, because I think orcs, like, oh, they run faster, and it can be a little mundane, but like being able to describe them in unique ways and play them up with these crazy abilities can really change the way people, because bandits might be boring, but if one of those bandits all of a sudden has the ability to teleport, now you're playing with gas. You've just made that combat interesting. I also, and this is tip number 3, I do this pretty regularly, reskinning low-level creatures and tweaking what you have. So, like, let's just say you're comfortable with the bandit. You know that they can take on the bandit. Well, if bandits don't fit in the narrative, change the name of the creature to fit the narrative. Like, if you're in a cave filled with, for instance, Shatine, I believe is their names, although I could be wrong.
I believe that.
I don't know, to be honest. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it. I'm
Sure.
just guessing on. It could be chitin. I don't know.
I was thinking because like don't spiders tend to have chitinous bodies?
Yeah, that was my guess too. But anyways, but if you give bandits web walk and web sense, suddenly they become that creature without having to without having to actually use that creature. Like, maybe it's too strong, or maybe tinker with it. And Kobold, and this is a warning, Kobold Fight Club, it's a great resource, but I tend to use it as a base and not a perfect model, because CR doesn't account for things like magic items, or the way your players play, or the myriad of other things that happen. Like, for instance, party makeup.
Yeah.
I threw shadows at my level 1 party, and because they were kind of spellcaster light, they took a little more of a beating than I anticipated, because these creatures are more, at least the ones that I used were more weaker to magic. So, that being said, use Kobold Fight Club or use the CR system as a base, not a perfect model, because things are always going to change.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, of course, one last thing. 4th edition had a really cool system, and I would probably use this more in medium encounters with like a boss and like a bunch of like minions and stuff like that, called minions, where you can throw a bunch of bandits at a low level party, but if you make them minions with 1 HP, then you can throw a bunch of them at them and make them feel heroic, because sure, they might be outclassed, but they can kill them in 1 hit.
Yeah.
you might need to make some more tweaks based on like, you know, how much damage they should do and stuff like that. But basically making any one of the monsters only have one hit point really like can tune it in favor of the players while still creating that kind of Lord of the Rings, like there's orcs and goblins everywhere, and like the heroes are like one-shotting the, you know, shooting him in the face with the bow and stabbing him in the gut with the sword. I would check it out.
Yeah.
4th edition had a lot of cool mechanics that I only learned just, you know, through my play as I was trying to tweak how combats worked.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Shall we wrap her up?
Yep.
Yeah, those were all good. Thank you for that advice, by the way, Cody. That was really good. I like that a lot.
Hell yeah.
And I think it makes doing a Helm's Deep style encounter more possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Because those can be scary. Because, like,
yes.
if you have a lot of, you know, 100 kobolds, you're going to get fucked up.
Yeah, and I think I have another, we'll do it in another episode, but I have a way, or a better way to do that than just throwing a bunch of kobolds at them. But anyways, let's wrap her up.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to Fan Roulette. Please go back to the middle section to figure out a little bit more about our social media. But at the very least, as always, please like, rate, review, subscribe, and send it to a friend. As always, we love doing this for you guys. It's a lot of fun, and it's great to be here. So
yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, this was a while ago. Did you mention we were also on Spotify?
What?
Did you mention we were on Spotify? I don't remember.
I did.
Okay, yeah, we're on Spotify. Yeah. I always forget that one for some reason. Feel free to share it with a friend. And signing off, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.